each week. Let's move in to our next segment. Me and the guys are interested about, and that's what Robert kind of put the cat out of the bag.
I'm sorry.
It's just a general discussion, Robert. So the general discussion is, man, over the last couple years, I think ever since people that know me, that's known me for a long time, Robert, you remember when I first started in iRacing, and not my driving part, but
we all do.
No, not that part.
Oh yeah, we remember you.
That's a dead horse.
I still got scars.
Yeah, that's a dead horse we beat to death. I don't know how many times, but I gotten hooked up real quick. Excuse me, I want to get a drink here a second when you guys start talking, but anyway, I got hooked up with David Lamb and I started racing for Rocket Racing setups, and that was one of the first big ones that was out there. There's like 2 or 3 real big ones that started, and they were really the only ones around. And I think they actually made a lot of money back then because they were the only ones around. But I started racing for them, and all I heard, dude, I got so much hate. I think a lot of the hate I got, part of it was because of the way I was in the track, and the other part is that so many people just hated setup shops back then. And so I was the brunt of a lot of that hate because I was on the track. I raced so many races. I think I had almost 900 starts my first year, and I only raced like 8 months out of the year and be open. And so, I was on the track all the time with that Rocket Racing car, and man, I just heard it nonstop. Setup shops are ruining iRacing, it's destroying everything, blah, blah, blah. And I'm not discounting that. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. I don't know. I just know that I didn't know how to build setups, and they were offering me all their sets for free if I just slap their logo on my car and try to sell their sets in races. And I was like, that sounds like a good deal to me. It'll save me some money. It was better than paying $10 a week, at the time, because I didn't know how to build nothing. And I wasn't with Tracy or anybody yet that knew how to build anything. So that's what I had. So over the years, man, over the last couple of years, I've had all kinds of discussions. Shoot, us here on this team, we've discussed it between ourselves before. Like, are setup shops a good thing? Are they a bad thing? Is it a neutral thing? What are they offering iRacing? Like, how are they hurting iRacing? And so I figured this would be a good time to have kind of a round table discussion on that.
I originally started with Majors. I was buying setups from Majors Garage.
Hey, we like Majors Garage here. They offer those free baseline sets and stuff, and
awesome.
It's great.
I love Majors because they do offer that for people. If you don't want to spend money, you're still welcome to come to the website.
And if you pay them, my goodness, $10 a month gets you access to like every series in iRacing pretty much. So and that's cheap, $10 a month. So anyway, so we love Majors here, and we're never going to knock them.
I thoroughly love Majors. Their setups for the most part fit me okay. So I started with them, and then I ended up going with Rocket when David was with Rocket. And David's setups fit me very well. They were very loose for the first couple laps, but they were fast.
Oh, yeah, and they were fast in the long run, man.
Wicked fast.
Long run spree.
Well, I mean, wicked fast. And it ended up David's setups got me 3 series championships, low divisions. But I got championships in late model, super late model, and SK mod. Because of David. But I was spending a ton of money. I mean, I was spending.
Oh yeah, it was like $10 to $15 a pop.
Yeah, and
at least they were back then.
Yeah, and then the battles started going between the setup shops. You guys probably remember this a year or so ago. They were starting to trash talk each other, and so I started to kind of back away.
Yeah, and now it's just broken down to straight up soap opera drama.
Oh, it was ridiculous.
I mean, but it was rivalry in like in what did you call the heated up or whatever, but back then. But now it's just evolved into straight up daytime soap opera drama.
Yeah, it was getting old. It was over greed and ego, and it kind of bugged me. And, the other things I started noticing was some of the comments that were being said by some of the setup shop owners towards customers, towards other iRacers were a little disturbing, to my opinion. They were saying things, trashing people who maybe had low I rating. And these are the people that you want to buy your sets. and it kind of bothered me. So I walked away from setup shops and said, you know what, I'm not doing this anymore.
So now that was your reasoning behind doing it. So now let's
But
just
it was the drama is what started it. It was the drama bothered me, the way they were talking. Then I know for a fact, I'm not going to list which setup shops or whatever. I know for a fact from their mouth, they were using different setup shops for their team guys than they were selling to their customers. And that kind of bugged me too. It's like, hey, we're going to sell you this and it's going to be the top of the line, what we run, but our guys are actually running something that's even faster. And that bothered me. So, and I run the iRacing late model, super late model group on Facebook. And I actually, because of all the drama that they were causing on there, I had to cut them and say, you can't post any more setups.
right.
It was just out of control. The drama that was not only the drama, but the constant spamming. And it was like, oh my God, you guys just give it a break for a second.
Yeah. So I'm with you on that. Like since I've been on the inside of some of the setup shop stuff before, I can tell you there's some builders that sell what they race. Okay. And Lamb always did that personally. I don't know about anybody else, but I know he did. But I also know other guys that did not, that they would race one thing and sell something totally different. And I saw it, and this is all inside baseball stuff that I witnessed. I saw it happen within the same shop. Like one builder selling legit good stuff while he was racing, and another builder building for a different car, not selling what he was racing in a race. And I pinned I'm not going to name the builder, but I pinned one of the builders down. This was a long time ago, so nobody remember but me. But I pinned him down on a Pacific track on what he was. It wasn't what I normally ran. It was something other than what I normally ran, and I just grabbed the set they were selling, and he was so much faster, and like his car looked like it was handling differently. And I just straight up told him, I said, I'm running something different. And it was wildly different. I'm like, well, how do I get mine close to what you got? And he was like, told me I made some like 3 or 4 like really different changes. I mean, the nose weight was completely different. I mean, it was just a completely different set when I got done, and making it to kind of what he had. And so like, I've seen both. I just would prefer people be honest and say, this is not what I'm running, but it's what I'm selling. Or yes, this is what I'm running, and be honest about it. Either way, it doesn't really matter to me as long as you're honest. And the customers know what you're buying. Yeah. So let's kind of move into. I switch back to gallery view so everybody can kind of see everybody that's got a webcam right now. I know Bobby turned his off. He must have stepped away, but when he turns his back on, you'll be able to see him again. But so let's talk about this. Like, what do you guys think? What do you get? Robert, I know you got some strong opinions here. What do you think about the setup shops, kind of what they've done to iRacing, good, bad, ugly, pretty, and different? Like, what are your thoughts on the subject?
Well, if it wasn't for the iRacing, BRS is what got me started on it. If it wasn't for them, I would be racing fix because I was so far behind everybody. And then you got the teammates that you got, and they'll help you out quite a bit to help build up your setups. But some of the times what I feel is that the guys will get these setups that are fast, but they don't have the car craft to run them. And they will run 10, 20 laps or something like that. And then they're in the way. I see, race setup shops are good, but you still got to spend that time to learn the car craft. And you just can't jump in there and start racing these big guys up there in front. And then all you're going to do is you're going to cause a wreck because you just don't have the skill level yet. That's the only thing I'm just saying. They had to develop the skill level as they're learning how to race these fast sets.
So Robert, you're not anti-setup shop yourself. You're just saying you're pro practice.
Practice.
Let's be honest. Since they changed the iRating and the safety rating system, people are really moving up faster than they should.
I agree.
Yes,
100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you can go in 1 week from running rookie street stock up to like B.
I did that.
And have no racecraft whatsoever.
I went from rookie to racing cup races in 10 days.
Yeah.
When I started.
When I started, I think it took me 4 months to get an A license when I started.
So there was some, you had to go through some seasons.
Yeah.
So if I know Matt Holden listens to some of our stuff sometimes from iRacing, and he's a developer for B Car, and maybe if he's listening, he don't have enough pull to change this. But I would love for somebody from iRacing to listen to one of these conversations like we're having, because I'd like for them to listen to the community and do something about it. Because I think there's a compromise that could be made here between the iRacing community and the iRacing business side of it. Because from a business perspective, they want the fast track because they're selling NASCAR. Like let's just be real. Like over in Europe, they may be selling GT3 and all this other stuff. And I'm not saying there's not road racers in America. There are. But the vast majority of people in the United States that buy iRacing, they buy it to go race NASCAR, the NASCAR Cup Series. They want to race all the NASCAR tracks and all that stuff. And so it's not a very good business decision then for iRacing to sell that to them and then say, okay, now you got to spend 12 weeks in rookie. Then you got to spend 12 weeks in D. Then you got to spend another 12 weeks in C. It's going to be a year or more before you get to race what we just sold you. I mean, it's a bad business proposition. Okay. And so I understand that, but I think it's also bad for the community to have guys going from rookie to cup racing in 7 days with zero racecraft banging down everybody's doors and stuff. So there's got to be a compromise to be had. And I think this is it. Fast track all you want. It's fine until you get to C class. And then from C class, you have to race a whole season, no more fast tracking. And the reason I say that is because it's the ultimate compromise, because you can get them from rookie to C in like 4 or 5 days probably. And once they get to C, then they're racing the big tracks. They're racing Charlotte, they're racing Talladega, they're racing Dover, they're racing Darlington, you're racing Atlanta. I mean, you're racing the actual NASCAR schedule. In fact, the C Open follows the trucks in the real life schedule. And then that way the people who are buying iRacing don't feel ripped off because they're going to get to race the big NASCAR stuff just in the trucks. And then they got to work their way through the trucks and maintain a certain iRating level like you would if there was no fast tracking. I think that would be like the best compromise for their business model versus, the community being upset with guys going out and just not knowing how to drive a race car and bouncing it off cars and walls and wrecking and everything else. I think that'd be a good compromise. What do you guys think?
One thing also is if I could go back and tell myself, my starting self, not to fast track, I would, because one, I got onto iRacing because I wanted to do gander, but I fell in love with short track racing. And if people would spend more time in short track, that is where you learn racecraft. You learn how to be close with cars, battle, and have to handle your car. That is where you learn it. And then you get up into the bigger tracks, and I feel like if you would spend a lot more time running short tracks, learning how to race around other cars and battle over and over and over again, you would be so much better at the big tracks. But they want to fast track up to gander, and it ends up being a disaster.
I agree. I can't just getting one of the big cars like the trucks or the B or the A, somewhere like Martinsville or Bristol or I'm trying to think of some other short tracks that in New Hampshire, like any of those short tracks you go to, just getting. I mean, guys don't know how to race. I mean, they're just plowing over each other. I mean, you'll have like the pace car leads more laps than any other car on the track at those races. So I'm with you 100%.
It's set. I'm wicked fast on Bristol for some reason, but I don't even go on it anymore because I know it's going to end up being a wreck fest.
And Dover's almost the same way. It's not even a short track, really. I mean, it's more of an intermediate type track. So anyway, Tracy, what are your thoughts on the whole thing?
Well, with the setup shops, when I first got on, there wasn't setup shops. So we had to learn, and that was the thing that I wanted to do is I wanted to get to up around the cup stuff, right? Run A, run B, run C, whatever. But I didn't want to run fixed because fixed just wasn't it for me. I just didn't like the way they drive. And I didn't have the racecraft to learn it. And I probably still don't. So I was kind of, I don't want to say, but I forced myself into the setup part of it. And there was a big, tall learning curve. And that's the problem with iRacing is the learning curve. So most people don't want to spend that or dedicate that type of time. And I believe some of these setup shops are the same way. They're not quality individuals putting out quality work. They're just putting out whatever or they're taking somebody else's work and changing a thing here and a thing there, making it their work. And that's the biggest problem, is you just got a bunch of copycats. I like to go to some of these setup shops, learn the builder, learn their traits. Okay. And I'll give an example of Matt Busa. Matt Busa was with, what's his name? Williams from the UK. You know what I'm talking about.
Oh,
Craig.
no,
Craig.
Apex.
No, Craig.
No, Craig Williams. Craig Williams.
Craig
Yeah,
Williams.
Craig Williams. Yeah.
Because Matt Busa was over there doing the oval stuff. Okay. So, and I was fascinated with, somebody outside of the United States doing these setups. And I got to learn his traits and what he did. And that's the part I like. But most of these setup shops, you could give me 5 or 6 of them, and most of them are almost carbon copies. And that's the sad part. There's no real skill in it.
Well, let's actually talk about that. And then all the setup shop people probably get mad at me, but I'm not looking at a single one of their sets. I don't have a single one on my screen, but I've seen enough of them where I can tell you exactly what all of them are going to be. I can just, and I'm not even a setup builder, but I can tell you what they're going to be. They're going to have real high poundage springs in the front, 5,000 to 7,000 springs up front. You're going to get your ride heights as low as possible to seal off the front, and then in the back, they're going to be running what we call big split in the back. They almost always do.
Right.
And that was what they always did before. That was, like anywhere from a 400 to a 400 to 500 on the
It was
left.
400 on the left, and
on the
usually
left,
800
and 800 to 1,000 on the right.
Yeah, right.
And it keeps the right end up in the air, and then they're going to use.
Yeah, and it's just almost like a cookie cutter approach.
Yeah,
so,
and then they run the nose weight at like most of them, and the cross weight both at like around 50%, give or take. 50 to 54% was usually the cross weight, and nose weight's usually similar. And then they tighten and loosen it up with slight cross weight adjustments in the track bar. And that's just what every single one of them did the same.
Well, that is what I'm running on Dover this week. Now you just gave my setup away.
No, you're not. But I was like to say, now they're changing a bit because some guys have went out and found a lot of speed with the right rear coil bind, and I've seen a couple different implementations of the right rear coil bind in some of these shop sets, because I've been doing all these setup shop reviews, so I've been buying a few of them. And so I've seen guys run more of an even spring on the back, because with the right rear coil bind, you're running like what, Trace? 175 to 3 something, like
it's 350 to whatever the minimum is, 200, something like that.
I thought it was 175, 200. But
it could
350, 350 down to like around 200.
Right.
Maybe a little less. And that's on the right with the right rear coil bind. And I've seen some sets where they build them where they try to match that kind of on the left, to where they run a soft spring on the left, so it's not real hillbillied or anything. And then I've seen other setups now where they've actually hillbillied it, where they run that coil bind with the soft spring with the hard coil bind on the right, and then they're running like a 600 pound or something on the left, and it's hillbilly. So that's the new thing that the shops are doing, because somebody's found some real speed with that right rear coil bind. I've been told all the top teams are running the right rear coil bind right now. And when I say top teams, I mean not setup shops. I mean the top guys that build their sets with their teams are running the right rear coil bind. And so then all of a sudden the setup shops are now they're all running right rear coil binds on the tracks that you can run it with. And so I'm not knocking it. I think there's a lot of speed there too. But what I'm just reiterating what you're saying about the copycat, Trace. I'm just saying it's all the same. Like the setups are slightly different here and there, but it's the same cookie. It's the same approach is all I'm trying to say.
Right. Exactly. And like originally when I looked at VRS's stuff, Keegan Leahy, right? Now Keegan was very creative with stuff. He was doing stuff totally different than everybody else, especially a couple years ago. And but it worked. And that was the big thing with VRS. You could buy a solid set that was pretty much reliable for 25 laps. And then after that, it had some issues after that. But for the most part, it was reliability. And then, like I say, then you get these other guys that say loose is fast, and they put stuff out there that only God could drive. And then, then they're missiles, and they're the ones that are cluttering up the racing, one, fast tracking, two, getting these setups that are just way over everybody's ability. Right. and that's okay. I mean, you know, that's what they're selling is speed, and that's what they're getting. But most people drive so far over their head that they just
Yep.
clutter up the racing, and like you say, it becomes the caution flag 500, and then everybody becomes disenchanted, and then they say, well, we don't like race shops, and we don't like this, and we don't like this. There's no creativity, no reliability. Everybody just, it's terrible. I mean, I think the last one we had was before Talladega. Was it Kentucky we were at?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Kentucky. So I worked and worked and worked trying to get you guys a coil bind set on the right rear, but unfortunately, with all the changes in elevation and banking and stuff like that, it was just hard because you would be fast up front. Then it became so loose that, you know, especially you, I mean, arms were flying everywhere trying to just counter steer this thing. And I think finally we went back to stuff that was more traditional, the
Yeah.
low springs and stuff, just to get it over the bumps and through the irregularities and stuff. But like I said, with the setup shops, there's no creativity. It's just flavor of the day. And at the end of the day, you know, if you can't drive it, it don't matter if you got 15 sets in your livery. But you know, they end up staying there because nobody knows how to adjust them. Nobody knows what they do. And that's the big thing is there's no training, no education going on here, rather it be in racecraft. I mean, you have driver development. And that's a nice thing I like about some of these setup shops. They offer coaching, all right? And that was discussed weeks ago. But the setup part, I mean, you can get tidbits, but you can't really get a guy go one-on-one with you and say, okay, this is what you do here, here, and here. Now, we've put out some videos, and the thing is, they were videos that really weren't viewed and taken advantage of. So what does that tell you the mindset of the community?
I don't think your speech there was necessarily a tirade against setup shops. We were just, it was just the idea that like people don't take the time to learn them, and they're all pretty much cookie cutter with some changes, you know, like
Right.
we're not saying they're identical, like somebody goes and rips somebody off. I mean, I guess that happens from time to time. We covered that a while back, but in general, we're not saying they rip them off. It's just that everybody's kind of learned the same way of doing it. And so, like, for instance, you were talking about, like, so we've been dabbling with trying to get a right rear coil bind team base set for a while.
Couple
now.
weeks now, yeah.
No, more than that, dude. It's been a few months. I remember
Yeah.
when Doug was still on our team before he left. I mean, he was even going out and trying to dabble with the right rear coil bind, trying to get something, because that's whenever the top guys just first started to get something that was fast with it, you know, and they were starting to beat us a little bit. And we were trying to figure out what they were doing. He started talking to some of them, and he kind of figured it out. And they pretty much told him they were doing a right rear coil bind. They didn't tell him anything else. They said, we're doing a right rear coil bind. So Doug's like, okay. And so he tries to get a set. And no matter what we did, we internally couldn't build anything faster than what we previously had as our base without the right rear coil bind.
Yes,
So,
exactly.
But now I've tried some setup shop sets since the setup shop's been doing a right rear coil bind, and I found them to be fast, but I don't know that they're faster than what we were running anyway. You know, so
How's the
I don't
fall off
know.
on them?
Yeah, I don't know. What'd you say, Brandon?
I said, how's the fall off on them though?
The cool. It's same. I don't have. There's no major. You just gotta be able to drive off the right rear. And I'm not saying burn the right rear. I mean, you just gotta learn to drive off of it and be okay with a car that could be kind of loose.
I can't drive off the right rear. But my right rear starts getting hot and it starts getting a little loose, and that just slows me down.
Yeah, I drive off the right rear whether it's a coil bind set or not.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I definitely wanted to chime in because I heard the last part of it. I have some my main point on this whole setup thing and people learning the track is learning the setup is people don't focus on learning the track first before they get into the setups. They'll go on the track. They'll say, I can't drive it. I need to adjust my setup, or I need a better setup, and they won't put laps in on the track. That kills me. I mean, it really irks me because I've been on. I was on track recently. I think it was Martinsville, and I forget who it was, but I was just logging laps because that's what I do, especially at Martinsville. I want to get my line down because that's a a rhythm track. You got to get your line down, and you need that rhythm to be fast there.
Mhm.
And someone was talking about their setup and about adjusting their setup, and their line was off and they were overdriving the turns, and I'm like, they were in one of the pay to win setups or something, and I'm like, I'm in a default setup, in my, my time's about I had about like 5/10 faster time than they were running in their pay to win setup, so it, I feel that people just need to focus on get in a default setup and learn the track first. The setups, an average person, I feel, can be just as fast as somebody in a, a setup shop setup, if they were to put the time into making their own setups. But they first, before they do that, they have to take the time in the learning the track. You can take a lot of the default setups that come with iRacing are fast enough for you to learn the track first before you start purchasing setups. So
I
that's
agree
my
with
two
that.
cents on it.
Well, I agree with what Bobby's saying, and I'll tell you why. Because we went to Darlington.
That's
and
exactly what I was thinking.
right. So we go to Darlington, and I'm terrible, right? At best. That's just being straight up. I was terrible. And it's like,
It's like my best track though.
yeah, and that's like Bobby would kill me the whole time. It's like, Bobby, what are you doing? I mean, he's running away from me, and we're on identical sets, right? So he goes, I said, Bobby, where are you letting off at? And we finally figured out through telemetry and some pictures, that we have in telemetry of where he was shutting off. And he would tell me his landmark, which happened to be a grandstand, which was 90 rows back from where I was stopping, right? What?
I remember that. It was
Yeah.
literally.
And I said, Bobby, I can't even coast this far. Oh no, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. So get out at this spot and then just turn the wheel, commit the car to the corner, right? And that's what I did. And it seemed like I was in a parking lot because I was going so stinking slow. But then again, I was like a half a second faster, and it's like, what? So then it's like, so I said, Bobby, let's go out and run a stint, right? I think we were at 20 laps or something crazy. So then after we were letting out, I was right on him. So if he let out early and I didn't, I was going to hit him. So I knew exactly where he was letting out. But the lap times remained. I stayed with him the whole time, didn't fry the tires off the thing. And it was just nowhere near what I thought I should be. Now, that at that point in time, I was on my old set of triples too. So we were talking earlier in the show with Brandon about headsets versus triples and that kind of stuff. I don't know if that was part of it or not, but I do know that I was missing my mark by a ton. So when people say back it up and everybody goes, well, they're just pulling away from me. Well, there's a little more to it than just getting out of the gas, coasting, and then sticking the gas to it again. I learned from you, Mike, that you may be getting out at that spot, but you pick it up to some degree earlier, right? And that's where I didn't. I was hauling it in there, turning it, and that's where most people mess up. And they
Burn your stuff up.
Yeah, and Darlington was the perfect example of that, Trace, because if I remember right, that night that we were doing this, because I was in there, you was in there, Bobby. I don't know if Robert was or not, but Scott Stevens was in there with us that night.
Yeah,
and I'm telling you, you were right. It was so bad at Darlington that you were still slowing down whenever I was getting back on the throttle.
Yes,
it was that bad. It was crazy.
Yeah, this isn't a knock on setups, because more power to them. They're making money. I mean, I'm not knocking them for that, but they're making money off of you not being able to drive the track.
Exactly.
So you just,
absolutely.
Well, they're also making legit money off customers like us. I mean, we're customers too, because let's face it, we build for B. Like, that's our bread and butter. That's what we do. So if I want to go race A, we don't have a base set for that. Like we don't have one. So I got to go get one, because we're not sitting around. We're spending all of our time on Xfinity Open. We're not spending time on anything else. We're customers too. But the difference is that we're customers because we want to go race something we're not building for. So let's go get us a solid set we know will be competitive. Let's go get one and go race, and we'll practice and everything else like we normally would. So we're not. So tag going at Brandon. I brought you in here. I figured, man, this would be a good segment, controversial. You'd be like, set up shop for the devil, but it's devolved into a normal conversation that we have because.
So I'll fix that. They're the devil. No, I'm just kidding. No, I don't hate setup shops. I couldn't stand the drama that they were causing because of greed and ego. But the other thing, like Bobby said, most people can do okay if they could just survive the race, learning how to drive the track.
Yeah.
People who are just there, barely being able to pay the bill to race on the system, are not enjoying it as much because they're getting dominated by these guys who end up in their split.
I know for a fact, though, there's a lot of people that don't pay anything for setups. You know how I know that? Is I got a 50% commission off everything that people could. If you get on my video right now and in the description, there's an affiliate link to Major's Garage. I get 50% off everybody's first month's subscription fee there. And I get emails every single day in my inbox, multiple emails a day of all these referrals I got and all these referral fees or commissions I'm going to get. And you know what they all say? Purchase price $0, commission rate $0. So I'm getting
no,
50%
Mike.
of
We
$0.
renegotiated that with Mike Willett. It's 100% of $0.
Yeah, that's right. Mike Willett was on
on
here, told me I'm going to start getting
You got a
100% of
raise.
$0.
You got a raise.
So I know there's a ton of guys right now getting free setups from Major's Garage.
And you know what? I got a lot of respect for Majors because they at least give that option to people.
Sure. Well, so I think there's a general consensus then. Nobody has a problem with setup shops being evil. It's drivers failing to be able to practice or failing to be able to drive the set that they have. Or not the set they have, but the set they're buying. So the setup shop's not the problem. It's people not putting the time in to learn how to drive the car.
Right.
Is that the general consensus? I mean,
That's what
Yes.
I agree.
Yeah, most people think that this setup's going to solve all their problems, and that's not the case because you take a good setup and a bad driver, you still got a bad driver, right? You take a good driver and a bad setup, it's not going to help, but he'll get the most out of it he can.
Right. That's it.
All right, so let's. I think it's a pretty full, rounded out discussion. I mean, I think that's pretty much where most rational people are at. Now, you always have your guys on some high level teams that used to dominate, and this is my last thoughts on it. And I've noticed that when I first started in iRacing, there's the at least B Open, A Open, like most of the NASCAR stuff was just dominated by teams that had team setups that they had built. That had all the special gravy sauce in them to make them really good in the long run. And I know that a lot of long run speed has to do with driving, 8/10 and 9/10 start out with and not cooking your tires. Like we all know that, but we also know there are some things you can put in a setup that makes it better on a long run. And those few teams had those, they kept them close to the vest. They didn't share them and they dominated. And all of a sudden they got really mad. Really mad when the setup shop guys just started selling them. They would sell them with all that in them. And so now they were having to compete with some guys that were pretty quick and could drive, but just didn't have the setup that would get them there. And then they didn't have to be on these teams. And these teams that I'm talking about were the gatekeepers of who they allowed to have those sets and who they didn't. And for your average iRacer, like Brandon was talking about, the percentage, I think it's less than 4% of iRacers have above a 3,000 I rating. I think that's the actual stat. Maybe it's 3 or 4% of iRacers have above a 3,000 I rating. And those are the guys that would really benefit from that extra sauce that goes into the set, the few things that can make it faster in the long run. And so for those guys, if you got to be part of the club, then you got, the Godfather came out and, anointed you, right? Whoever ran these teams. So these setup shops sell them, enabled those guys that the teams didn't bless to be able to run the same stuff pretty much that they were running. They didn't like it. And I think that was a lot of the big anger, because those guys, and especially if one of those guys caused a wreck or something, they got really upset. So that's my final thought. I think that's where a lot of the hate came from at the beginning with the setup shops, is that those guys no longer controlled who had the best sets and who didn't, and anybody could just go buy one. And I think that caused a lot of grief. And then you throw in the fact that people didn't practice the overrear of the car and everything that we've already talked about on top of that. And I know it's probably not as hot of a topic today as it was, a year and a half ago, whenever everybody was hating on setup shops. I mean, I know not just one guy. I know like 3 or 4 guys that were like on a I gotta laugh because I know what I'm about to say, and I'm laughing about it before I say it. But they were like letter writing campaigns, like you would to your congressman. Like whenever people get upset about something going on, and they own letter writing campaigns to their congressman. Well, I know for sure a handful of guys that were based on letter writing campaigns to iRacing to get rid of setup shops because they were just destroying all of iRacing. So I don't think we're there anymore. But a year and a half ago, that's where we were at. I mean, some people were just livid and just fit to be tied, over the whole setup shop deal. So I'm glad we've kind of got to the point to where everybody agrees that somebody selling a set's not the problem. It's the person holding the wheel and not putting in practice and not learning the track. And that's what's really, driving over their head and getting a setup they can't handle, because they're not putting in the times. I think that's probably the general consensus, not just with us here in this podcast, but with pretty much everybody at this point. I think there's some people still that probably have the think setup shops are the devil view, but I think the majority opinion is pretty much what we've expressed tonight. So I think that pretty much wraps up this segment. Hey, I hope you enjoyed this short clip from our Alien Factory podcast. Be sure to check us out every Sunday night at 10 p.m. Eastern time here on our YouTube channel. That is youtube.com/Area 51 Alien Factory. Also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you have not subscribed yet. We really appreciate your subscription to the channel. Also, if you really want to help the channel out, the best thing you can do is share this video anywhere you can, on Facebook, on Twitter, Discord, anywhere that you can share the video. We'd appreciate it. That's really going to help our channel out. Also, get down to the bottom and you can check out the description below. There's some promo codes and affiliate links down there and different things down in the description. So don't forget to get on and check that out. And if you would like to get notified anytime that we go live with either our podcast, live streaming races, or when we upload any of our great on-demand content series here on the channel, just hit that bell icon down below and you will get notified anytime that new content comes up on the channel. We appreciate you sticking with us this video. And as always, we will see you in the next one.